की एनर्जी कम है. Nandini Sen Gupta ji is a Pondicherry-based journalist and writer of the historical fiction and narrative history. Her book credits include the best-selling The Blue Horse and Other Amazing Animals from the Indian History. Was shortlisted for Author Awards 2021 in the children's fiction category and selected for the prestigious Parag Honor List and Bal Sahitya Puraskar. Rani Durgawati, The Forgotten Life of a Warrior Queen, is the first non-fiction historical biography. The book debuted to widespread acclaim in November 2022 and has consistently been in the Amazon top 50 women in history bestsellers list since its launch. I think that calls for an applause. That's a big thing. And it also recently made it to the shortlist of all Author Awards 2023 in the Best Non-Fiction category. And her prestige calls for her to speak at multiple such festivals in and across the country and abroad. We welcome you, ma'am, wholeheartedly. As the discussant for the day, for this session, we are extremely delighted to have Dr. Neha Jain with us. She is an IAS officer currently posted as CEO Zilla Panchayat in Ashoknagar, Madhya Pradesh. She graduated as a dental surgeon from Maulana Azad Surgeon from Maulana Azad Medical College, New Delhi, and worked there before joining the Indian Administrative Services in 2018. She also has a national she is also a national medalist in gymnastics and has a diploma in Bharatnatyam. That's a multi-talented bio. She enjoys reading while playing her ukulele and when not reporting to duty, of course. Hearty welcome to you, ma'am. And as the second discussant for this wonderful session, we are delighted to have Jyoti Pande ji with us. She is an ardent educationist and a practicing psychologist with an experience of over 20 years in the field of teaching and counseling. Married to an army officer, she has been extensively involved in warfare activities for the families of defense personnel. She was heading the counseling cell in the Bhopal military station and was instrumental in setting up a wellness and happiness center for well-being of army families at Bhopal. And she is also an established storyteller and is the founding member of the Indian Storytellers Healing Network. और आप में से जो लोग भारत भवन में आज अलग अलग वेन्यूज़ पे घूम रहे हैं वो कहीं ना कहीं उनकी स्टोरी टेलिंग वर्कशॉप भी अटेंड कर चुके हैं and we have thoroughly enjoyed her workshop and it's time we listen it from the ladies themselves and I'll be requesting the ladies to please begin the session and we must start the session with a round of applause, please everybody. Thank you so much. Over to you, ladies.
So, a warm good evening to all and my apologies to Meenakshi. She had been running around looking for me and I was sitting in some other, venue. Immediately after the storytelling workshop was this and so that happened. But anyway, I feel this is a auspicious beginning. जब कभी भी कुछ गलत हो जाता था तो कहा जाता अब आगे बहुत अच्छा होगा. So I'm looking to a lovely session and I just met Nandini yesterday and it felt we had known each other for ages. And that is the power of, I think, literature and womanhood, if I may say so. And today we are going to talk about an extremely beautiful book on Rani Durgawati, the warrior princess, the forgotten life of a warrior princess. And before I begin the session, I have the book in my hand, which I haven't left, for the past 1 week. I have been carrying it along anywhere I go. So, Rani Maharani jo aaye, Mata Durga jo aaye. माँ जूझो धारे तरवार माता दुर्गा कहाए. This is a Gond folk song and I seriously believe I found history always to be very boring and dull and if ever, I feel if history was taught the way this book is written, it will always be etched in the heart of people and it would never be boring. It's a beautiful, beautiful book written by Nandini, and I feel so honored and privileged. And for both of us, Neha and self,
Yeah, true.
I would talk for her to be discussing this amazing book with her. And as Siddharth mentioned, it has been shortlisted for Author Award 2023, and our best wishes to Nandini. May we celebrate the book winning the award. So, Nandini, being a storyteller, I'm always fascinated by the backstory of anything. So, the book, of course, is beautifully written, and we'll be talking about the book. This is on Rani Durgawati, who ruled about 500 years back, and she was a very courageous princess or queen and ruled the kingdom of Garaha Mandla. And so, what is the backstory, Nandini? What prompted you to write book on Rani Durgawati?
So, thank you. Thank you, Jyoti. I'm really honored. Big thank you to Bhopal Literature and Arts Festival for giving me this platform. This is really, really special, and I want to first thank and acknowledge the person without whose help this book would not have been possible. And he's a gentleman by the name of Dr. Suresh Mishra. He used to teach history in Bhopal, in Bhopal, and he was an authority on Rani Durgawati and her dynasty, the Rajgons. And I'm not a historian. I consider myself a journalist who likes to report on stories that happened hundreds of years ago. But I needed the hand-holding that Professor Sharma gave me. Unfortunately, we lost him to COVID in 2021, but I have never come across a more generous and giving and more erudite soul than him. So this is for you, sir. And the story of Rani Durgawati is, I have a favorite word, which is serendipity. And there is nothing that defines this word better than how the story of Rani Durgawati came to me. My father grew up in Jabalpur. So I have, as a child, grown up hearing stories of his life in Jabalpur, in the cantonment area. And so Jabalpur was there in my kind of consciousness. Then a couple of years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, I was researching a book called The Blue Horse and Other Amazing Animals of Indian History. And as part of that book, I came across the story of Sarman the elephant, who was Rani Durgawati's favorite elephant. And the story of both the elephant and the queen was so amazing. It kind of came out of the mists of time and grabbed my attention. And for the next 4 years, I've been fangirling this very, very feisty queen from medieval India. And the reason I've been doing that is because I, as a modern woman, consider myself a feminist, but I have never, never, ever come across a more modern medieval monarch than Rani Durgawati. In every aspect, if we think of feminism as the strength to push the envelope, then this lady who lived 500 years ago, 2024 is her 500th birth anniversary. This lady did it 500 years ago, and she is an absolute inspiration. So that's how it was born.
And for the audience, if you are wondering why are we in this bright yellow dresses,
Yeah.
I would tell Nandini to leak out the secret. Why are we all wearing
See,
yellow,
let me tell you before you leak out the secret. I was just told by Jyoti, I was instructed by her. Now, why don't you wear something yellow which is in your wardrobe? And now I see a few people with yellow also. So you are all a part of this session. We manifested you here. And now to you, why is yellow so important to the session?
So this session is so special because Rani Durgawati was from this part of India. Her kingdom of Garha Mandla or Garha Katanga included what we are now sitting in now, Bhopal. Okay, and of course it was one of the most prosperous and biggest kingdoms in medieval India. And Bhopal state itself was carved out of Garha Katanga after Rani Durgawati's death. And so it is entirely in the fitness of things that we are talking about the queen sitting in Bhopal, number one. Number two is, why are we wearing yellow? Because Rani Durgavati's kingdom comprised a tribal population. So her subjects were primarily, particularly in medieval times, they were primarily tribal Gonds. And the Gonds, even to this day, if you go to Jabalpur, you will see that on special occasions, on 24th of June, which is her Balidan Divas, and on 5th of October, which is the Rani's birth anniversary, they wear yellow in her honor. So the yellow saris that Gond women wear, the yellow turbans and yellow dhotis that Gond men wear, and then the songs they sing, they venerate the Rani, and they've been doing this for 500 years. So we wear yellow today in her honor.
Excellent.
So, thank you, Nandini, for sharing, with the audience why we all decided to dress up in yellow to honor our queen, warrior queen, and we are all queens, right? So my second question to you, Nandini, is I always feel writing a fiction is much easier. You can take so much of liberty, whereas writing a biography, you need to get hold of the various primary and secondary sources, and you have to be authentic, and you have used a lot of folklores and folk tales in writing this biography. So I would like you to tell us how you sourced all these writings for the book.
So, we tend to forget. Here's a disclaimer. In school, me, like everybody else, any average person you ask, they'll say, oh, history is boring. It's about things that happened hundreds of years ago. It's about the past. The past is dead. Correction. Number one, the past is never dead. The past is with us. How we speak, the clothes we wear, the food we eat, the jewelry we wear, our everyday lives, in everything the past lives on. Number two, history is not boring at all, because the big component of history is story. His story, her story. So what I have tried to do is write pure history like a story. And when I started researching, I truly felt like a female Indiana Jones, because there was so much that I was discovering. And there were people that have written about the queen who were her contemporaries, what we call in historiography, it's called primary source. So there were people who were writing about her who were her contemporaries. There were people who were writing about her 200, 300 years later. And the tone of veneration and sometimes grudging respect that they use convinced me that this was a most unusual historical figure. And the reason why I wanted to talk about her was that this unusual historical figure was both forgotten and remembered. And if that sounds like a conundrum, it is because it is.
Yes. I must confess this, that I was the last one to receive this book, and I've been pestering your publisher that where are you, give me the book, I need to read the book before I go to the session. Thankfully, I received the book 3 days ago, and after work, I was hooked on the book. And this is absolute truth, that I used to come back from work, get on the writing, get on reading this, and then writing whatever thoughts I have regarding the book. And despite being heavily adorned with history, despite being heavily adorned with folklore, this biography is a very easy, quick read, because maybe for women, it's still very relatable. And I must say that, I've been serving in this state for a couple of years. Rani Durgawati being here as we sit here, her kingdom was here, the Gond kingdom was here. I have only fleetingly heard about her, I must confess. So my question to you is that despite this wonderful story of Rani Durgawati, why is she still missing from our collective consciousness?
Thank you for asking that question. So, there are 3 reasons why Rani Durgawati was forgotten. Number one is, and I know there's a fair number of men sitting in the audience. I'm not anti-men, please do understand. But Indian history's male gaze is not unknown. It does have a male gaze. We do have an obsession with male monarchs. But the truth is that India has had a long line of absolutely, pardon my using the word, kick-ass queens, and who've had long reigns, who've had very excellently administered reigns, who have been very, very strong in the battlefield as well, Rani Durgavati being one example. So I think she suffers from this male gaze as well. The reason why she has become a footnote in her own story is because her adversary was a man whom we have turned into a great. So all the greats in our history, you know, are all invariably men. And her adversary was Akbar the Great. So because, you know, the adversary is the great and a man, she has fallen in his shadow. That's number one. Number two, of course, is that her kingdom in the heart of India is primarily tribal. So she was very far from Delhi. Our history's Delhi focus is also not unknown. We have a overwhelming sort of obsession with stuff that happened in Delhi / Agra / Patliputra. And if it did not happen in that area, then it did not happen at all. But that's not true. Our history is like a patchwork quilt. And every region has its own story. And the way we capture the essence of India is we capture those stories. But number three is, of course, like I said, she suffers because most of the time, if you go to Wikipedia, which is certainly the worst source of history I can think of, but if you do, you'll find one line describing her. Gond queen who was defeated by Akbar's general Asaf Khan, full stop. But she's not a footnote, and she's certainly not a defeatist footnote. And if you read her story, you will see how far her story is really from the way she has been described. So she's not had a good deal from history.
Absolutely. And as you said, Nandini, you know, history was obsessed with male gazing. And Akbar and Rani Durgawati were both contemporary and adversary, both. And how would you compare their rulings, you know? I read in the book that Rani led the kingdom with secularism and sacredness, right? And people say Akbar was the most secular person, whereas I read a lot about Rani in the book. So just if you could...
So, you know, if you look at Rani Durgavati's story, it's very interesting to see that many of the top generals who fought alongside her in the final battle of Narayanala were actually Muslim. There are several generals I have mentioned by name: Khan Jahan Rakit, Mubarak Khan, Shams Khan Miana. There's a whole long list of these Muslim generals. How did they come to fight alongside and for the Rani? You see, the Miana Afghans attacked Rani Durgavati, and she faced more than 50 skirmishes in her 15-odd years of rule. So the Miana Afghans, and she remained undefeated in every single one of them. The Miana Afghans attacked her. She gave them a nosebleed reply, and they were so impressed with her generalship that they joined her forces, and they were some of her senior most generals, and every single one of them gave their lives fighting for her. So there was no concept of religion coming into her idea of who should be promoted or not in her court. So the same liberal values that we laud Akbar for were also exemplified by Rani Durgavati, and we don't get to hear about that at all. You know, we really don't. And you have to also understand that Chauragar, which was her capital fort, after she dies, her teenage son is taken away to Chauragar. Then the monsoon ensues. So the campaign, Asaf Khan's campaign, is stopped for the time being because Chauragar is in the Satpura hills. Then 2 months later, Asaf Khan attacks Chauragar. And again, the young king puts that fort under 2 generals, one Hindu, one Muslim, and asked them to conduct a jauhar should he perish. And they do so. And he goes out to fight Asaf Khan in what is clearly a suicide mission, and he dies. So imagine the extent of liberal thought that is embedded in this particular dispensation. That even at the last minute, when a jauhar has to be done, the two people in charge, there's one Hindu and one Muslim. So Rani Durgavati's liberal credentials are not talked about, and like I said, Akbar casts a very long shadow on medieval Indian history, and unfortunately, Rani Durgavati has been shadowed by it.
And she had many lakes named after her commanders, which were Muslims. She was known as the Queen of Lakes, 64 lakes. Yeah, she helped in construction of those lakes, right?
And very unfortunately, today if I search on Amazon, I'll get 50 books on Akbar,
Yeah.
but I'll get merely 2 or 3 which mention Rani Durgavati, despite she being a fierce contemporary and adversary.
Actually, Rani Durgavati that way is fortunate, because you'll get at least one Amar Chitra Katha on her before this book. But there are other queens like Abakka, Chauta, and you don't know anything about them.
Yes.
So they've been sort of airbrushed out of our historical narrative completely.
True. As you said earlier, that, we have a male gaze to the history. And whenever we think about it, we know that a man on a white horse will come and slay everybody. And, I think in Indian history, women have been described only as 2 contrasts. One is the Devi, Shakti, Prakriti, who is, she is such a Devi that she is a boon giver and she slays demons. On the other hand, you see a domestic handmaiden. She's trailing behind her man in everything, in job, opportunities, nutrition, and freedom. But interestingly, in your biography, I saw you don't stick to these contrasts. You mention her humane side. You mention that she's a beautiful Rajput princess who falls in love with a charming Gaunt prince. They want to elope at that time, and it's an intercaste marriage. And eventually they get married. So you talk about her love, her longing, her happiness, and her eventual heartbreak. So was this a conscious decision to make Rani Durgavati humane?
So, Rani Durgavati is such an inspiration for me, precisely because she is so modern, and there is in her no contradiction between her femininity and her obvious feminism. Obviously, we have to understand that this is medieval India we're talking about. If she was alive today and we told her that you're a feminist, she would probably not understand what we are talking about. But the point is that if feminism is a question of choice, then this is a historical character that exemplifies it. You're quite right. She is a Chandel princess. She's a Rajput. She falls in love with a tribal Gond prince. This is not very common in medieval India. She elopes with him. She gets married to him. They have a little child. He dies. He has a brother who obviously has some very interesting ideas of ruling the kingdom as regent. But she fobs him off, gets the entire court on her side, so much so that he runs away and does not set foot in Garha as long as she is alive. Okay? Then she handles her kingdom so well, with such efficiency, that she is turned into a goddess by the Gonds. And this is very interesting, because there are examples of people from Itihasa who have become goddesses. But a historical person who's actually become a goddess is very rare. And Rani Durgavati is one such. And if you read the book, you'll see actual references. The songs call her Ran Chandi. So like Chandi Mata ki Roop. So for the Gonds, she and her celestial namesake, which is Durga, which is Rancha, they are interchangeable. And if you read, the songs are so powerful because they sort of constantly hark to her powers, which to the Gonds is like divine powers, and the divine Devi from whom she gets her name. But she's also many other things. She is a wife, she's a lover. There are songs, there are Sanskrit inscriptions talking about their love. She is also a mother. She is a mother not only to her son, Bir Narayan, but also to the elephant Sarman, who's like her son. And she is an excellent administrator. She is a ruthless politician. She knows exactly what to do. So she's not one-sided. She's not a bechara. She's not the sacrificial woman that, ho, main to sab de chhod diya, she's not like that at all. She's a kind of person who goes out there and grabs her destiny with both hands. And that's why she's so inspirational.
Absolutely. I think it's all about being divine feminine, right? Embracing the qualities, the nurturing qualities of a woman and the aggressiveness or the so-called male traits which are looked upon by the society. So she had the beautiful combination of both. So divine feminine is the right word if I can think about it. And also she was a lover of the nature.
Yes, I mean, the contrast that you said, I think to add to it is a very beautiful phrase in the book, and it says that Abu Fazl writes in Akbarnama that it used to be her custom that whenever she sees a tiger, she will not drink a drop of water until she has her shikar. So this is the kind of a woman who decides, and literally so she has a killer instinct. And on the other hand, she loves animals. She made a hathi tal for the most loyal, beautiful elephant, Sarman, as you said. So what a contrast is it to love shikar and to love animals. I mean, that is something that the audience would like to know. What do you feel of this contrast in her personality?
So thanks for this. This is a very interesting aspect of her character. In fact, the Gonds believe that after she died, Sarman elephant, when he was killed, he covered her body with his own, so that her body would not be desecrated. So this is the Gond belief. There are so many beautiful stories about, and if you go to Jabalpur, please do go and visit Jabalpur. There is a beautiful memorial, Samadhi Sthal, at that precise spot in Narayanala where the battle happened, where she died. And in that Samadhi Sthal, you will find there is a beautiful murti of Rani Durgawati and a beautiful murti of Sarman the elephant. And the Gonds come and give diyabati. Diyabati is like, they give a lamp and flowers as offering to both the queen and Sarman elephant. Both, to this day. I mean, I was there in June 24th. It's exactly the same. The songs are the same and their offerings are the same. And one of the oldest examples of this, if you read the book, there is a reference to it. Alexander Cunningham talks about a shebayat, a servitor of Rani Durgawati at that spot. Of course, right now it's very beautifully done. There's a murti and all that. Back then, 200 years ago, there was nothing. But the fact that that was the Samadhi Sthal, and there was a Shebayat who would give diyabati to her 200 years ago, just as they do now, show how much her people continued to love her.
So I was about to ask you about that ritual, but it was so beautifully described in the book Nandini. And the history would have been different if she had won the battle against Akbar. And the Battle of Narahi Nala, which was fought for 3 days. And like you have pointed out in the book, the day one, they did win the battle, right? And had her men not let her down, or I would say listen to her, the history would have been different and she would have defeated Akbar. So that was something very interesting in the book. Please share some details about the battle, Nandini.
So before I talk about the Battle of Narayana, I just want to say something very interesting. It's common for, when you are... Okay, sorry. When you are recording today, like suppose I'm going to have my story being looked at by somebody 100 years from now, okay? My friends will obviously say nice things about me. Similarly, if I'm a king and I get a bunch of historians to write the history, they will say nice things about me, particularly if this is medieval India, when if you don't say nice things about me, you will lose your head. So it's obvious that the court hagiographer is going to say nice things about the subject that they're talking about. But imagine when a bunch of your enemies say nice things about you. What does that say about you? in Rani Durgavati's case, the most decisive and complete account of her reign comes from Abul Fazl, who was Akbar's court historian and hagiographer and his close friend. Abul Fazl was not Rani Durgavati's friend. But if you look at how he has described Rani Durgavati, there is absolute grudging respect bordering on reverence. And he calls her a monarch who had a complete share of beauty and grace. And at no point did she lose courage. These are her adversaries talking about her. And later on, of course, we have the second, that was primary source. We have secondary sources. We have a bunch of English, British civilians who talk about Rani Durgavati. People like William Thuggy Schliemann, for instance. Remember, William Thuggy Schliemann was the same gentleman who was responsible for, or was instrumental and critical in the ouster of the Nawab of Awadh, Wajid Ali Shah. And if any of you here have seen Satyajit Ray's beautiful film, Shatranj Ki Khilari, you will see how Amjad Khan refers to Suleiman Bahadur in the most disparaging terms, as he should. But the same William Thuggy Schliemann talks about Rani Durgavati in the most effusive prose. Effusive. He calls her an Indian Boudica. Boudica is this British queen, very, legendary British queen. He calls her an Indian Boudica. Another gentleman, James Forsyth, calls her like Sita, the flower of Indian womanhood. These gents did not necessarily talk about Indian personages in this vein. Let me assure you, these are the same people who were also responsible in the ouster of another Virangana, Jhansi Rani Lakshmibai. They do not normally refer to Indian historical characters with this extent of respect. Rani Durgavati gets that respect. There's a reason. She's different.
And of course, she was loved by her own Gonds who say, Tumka Raj Karat ho Akbar, Durga Patiya Churai. So it's very interesting. They tell Akbar, learn a thing or two about administration from Rani Durgavati. So Akbar being told to learn administration from Rani Durgavati's, just imagine how much she was loved and how much of trust people had in her administrative capabilities,
I'm just going to go back to your question a little bit because I went off on a tangent. Yeah. Talking about Narayanala, what happened that day was, the Battle of Narayanala happened over 2 days. Okay, so the first day, again, how do we know about this? Let me assure you, it comes from a primary source. It comes from Mr. Abul Fazl himself. The first day, the Rani's son goes out and battles valiantly and is injured. Then she comes out and she battles them and they win a great victory. Abul Fazl himself says that more than 300 Mughal soldiers, senior Mughal soldiers, were killed, okay, and the Gonds are victorious. Then what happens? Rani Durgavati comes back, the Gonds are jubilant, they cannot believe it. The Mughal army was among the strongest and best armies in that contemporary world, not just in India, but anywhere in the world. And to win against this army, remember the Mughal army that attacked her was at least 5 times the size of her army, okay? And she did not have cannons. They did. They had big cannons. These guys were only using topographical warfare. They chose their spot well. They knew the topography. Okay, so they were doing guerrilla warfare. Then what happens? At the night, she convenes a meeting. She tells her generals, listen, we have to attack at night. Why? Because Asaf Khan has big cannons. We have got them to enter a narrow defile. If you go today also, you'll see what Narayanala is. It's a defile. It's a ravine. We've got them to enter this ravine. They could not bring the cannons in. So we have managed to take them out with sharpshooters. In the night, they're going to roll the cannons in. We will lose our advantage. They will destroy us. Let us attack in the night. Her generals refuse. So after this, she goes back to her tent and she calls a smaller body of generals who are closest to her. And she tells them, listen, I don't need too many people. I just need a couple of you and I will lead it. I will lead the raid. Let's go and attack and destroy those cannons, and I assure you, we will be victorious tomorrow. They still refuse. Next morning, when the sun comes up, what she had predicted happens. During the night, Asaf Khan rolls the cannons in. They take on the Rajgond infantry. The Rajgond infantry is very badly wounded in battle. Then she is wounded. She is sitting on top of the elephant. The rank and file don't really know whether she is injured or dead. She takes an arrow to her temple, an arrow to her neck. She falls down unconscious. They think she's dead. They start deserting. So see what happens. So right till the end, she did not give up, and her rallying cry was death before dishonor. Imagine how strong you have to be able to do this, knowing that the men around you are letting you down.
I think, the world hasn't changed much, unfortunately. I mean, I feel that today, as a woman in administration, I have to prove it that, yes, I can be your administrator, so please listen to me. And that really happens, that whenever we see some kind of stories, we feel that, no, this is such a long time back. Now we've changed. The patriarchy has changed. But to still see an administrator, a woman, the subordinate who's a male and who may be, more aged than you, he will maybe not refuse today, but he will certainly say, madam ko nahi pata, getting out of the room. So I certainly feel that, many things have changed, and sadly, many have not. Very interestingly, the last chapter of the book that you write is remembering Rani, the queen who never died. So this is so interesting. What kind of myths and memories does she still live in us today, in Gond and beyond?
So, so I always say that I'm a lay person who's interested in the story of history. I'm not a historian. I am a journalist by profession. So when I was writing this book, I did what, journalism 101 is, which is, you go around asking people, aapko kya soch rahe hain aap, yahan ka mahol kya hai? So I went to this temple in Barman Ghat. And that temple was built by Rani Durgawati. It's a Shiva temple, but most of the offerings that come from women. So I spent one entire delightful winter afternoon sitting there and just doing a vox populi. There were women who were coming with the puja. And I was just asking them, aapko malum hai? Aapko Rani ji ke baare mein malum hai? Aapne kuch suna hai? Every single one of them had a story. Now, the point is that many of those stories are not true. You see, they are fantastic stories. Rani ji to invisible ho jate the, Rani ji to unka niche dungeons tha, surang the, yahan se wahan jate the. All of this, there's a lot of fantasy mixed in that. But it is important to remember that memory is also history. And why people remember something and how they remember it is a crucial element of history as well. So when I went to Jabalpur, every single person I talked to, a senior officer in Madhya Pradesh Electricity Board, a young student who's studying in Rani Durgawati Vishwavidyalaya, Gond women who are doing social service in Gond villages, politicians, all sorts of people. I did that vox populi thing, and everybody had a story about Rani Durgawati. I used to play near these ghats. Do you know that under the river there is a tunnel that connects to Madanmal? Of course there is no tunnel. But, but what I'm trying to say is that the popular imagination has taken actual history and built a mythology around the Rani. And that's how she has survived for 500 years. That's how she is remembered.
And, after reading the book, Nandini has written so beautifully about Rani, everything. I mean, she was a great administrator, she was a nature lover, she was a fabulous mother, a wife. So I kept wondering, how can anybody be so perfect, Nandini? So my question to Nandini is, you have researched obviously so much. What is that one weakness Rani had? Because like Neha said, we want to know the humanness,
humane aspect.
yes,
Yes.
of the Rani.
So, when I was researching her, there was a point when I was getting, frustrated also with this character. Because I was trying to reach out through history and just give her a shake. Because you can see that she is depending on a bunch of men in her life who are probably not going to do the job that she expects them to do. What do I mean by that? She sends her prime minister, Adhar Kaist, on a very delicate diplomatic mission to Akbar's court. She is assuming that he is going to be able to do what he is supposed to do, his brief. He fails, and he is considered to be one of the wisest men, like Birbal. Birbal was from Riva. So, that region has thrown up these wise men. And so he's supposed to be one of those, but he fails spectacularly in his mission. And then what happens? The generals, when they are supposed to be there for her, when Asaf Khan actually lands up at her, almost at her doorstep, he reaches Damo, and she is in Chauragar, and she suddenly realizes that the enemy is at her doorstep. What happens at that point? The Gond structure was very decentralized. So the Gars, the various Gar fortress districts, were under Gond chieftains. And they were responsible for raising men and arms. So when the king and the queen called them, these people would come and join the forces. That's how it was. When Asaf Khan turned up at her doorstep, the Gond chieftains were nowhere around. She had only 500 people with her. And then, of course, she used her own quick thinking and dodged him, and then got him to the exact same point where she had earlier also defeated Baz Bahadur, gave him a nosebleed defeat. All of that she did, only for them to again let her down on the second day when she begged them to attack at night. So again and again, this woman is trying to convince herself that the men around her will do the job that they are meant to do. And again, they let her down. And I think that is a very sad aspect of her life.
I
In
think
fact, the
she
Mahout
trusted.
also.
Yes.
The
Mouth also.
Mahout also. She begged the Mahout while, she knew she's going to lose the battle, and she begged him, "Ki, please kill me. I don't want my body to be, yeah. And he did not. He did not. Maybe out of respect. But I don't know.
So she says that, I am not going to be captured alive. And she realizes that there's no way, so it's a defile, right? This is tactical warfare. And the defile is filling up with water because the Narmada and the Son are both in spate. The defile is filling up with water. There is no escape possible. The elephant is very badly wounded, is bleeding, is going to die. There is no escape possible. So she knows her son has been taken away. He's going to live to fight another day. She says, please kill me. I'm also almost mortally wounded. I'm not going to allow them to catch me alive. What does her Mahout do? He says, but you are my mother. I cannot kill you. So even at the last minute, when she's begging him that, do your duty, I am ordering you, he says, I'm sorry, I cannot do it. So she takes the dagger and she kills herself. So the men in her life consistently let her down. And yet she continued to expect them to do what she thought they would do. That, I think, was a failing.
What a feeling. And please tell us about this very famous picture which you are a little sad about, that you couldn't put it in the book, about the Rani with,
It's
So there are two contemporary pictures, portraits, pictures of Rani Durgawati. The first is this. This was actually painted during her lifetime. This picture, if you want, is there in Chennai Egmore Museum. And the authorities in the museum were very kind to allow me to use it for the book. But there is another very interesting picture. It's in the Akbarnama. And that picture shows the last moment in Rani Durgavati's life. It's a very graphic picture. It shows that battle scene in Narayanala. She's wounded. It shows the two exact spots where she's wounded, and she's killing herself. So it's a very dramatic picture. This picture is sitting in Victoria and Albert Museum in London, and we tried to get a copy of the picture to be used in the book, but the amount that they asked for was so exorbitant that I couldn't afford it. As you can imagine, authors in India don't make that kind of money. But I felt that this was really unfair that the Akbarnama, which is part of my heritage as an Indian, is sitting in a British museum where the Brits are expecting me to pay a steep amount to access it for a book that I'm writing on my heritage. If that isn't unfair, I don't know what is.
May we get the picture soon, and in your further editions we can have that picture, is what I would wish, Nandini.
I hope so. I think Indian researchers should at least get access to our heritage that is sitting in British museums. At least get access, because this is our heritage. We are going to do the cutting edge research on our heritage, and it's very unfair that stuff that was summarily stolen or otherwise acquired back in the day should now be denied to us.
I think, as you said, that she trusted her men too much, and maybe that is the humane part of her story. And for a biographer, I think it becomes very difficult to not put your muse up high in the pedestal and to not mention the little humane side. As you said, her love story, her heartbreak, and of course, her trusting her men too much. What is more interesting in the book also is the folklore that you use. Beautifully, every chapter gives you that window to the chapter is a little doha and the folklore that says. And well, I'm going to tell my favorite one.
Okay, and then I will tell mine.
Yes. So my favorite one is Chandi Roop Dhari Maharani Dono Haath Talwar Bhagan Lage Dilli Ki Sena Durga Se Pai Na Par. So this was something so favorite and dear to me that I thought I'm going to read it out from the book because it gives a window to her life and her story. So now your favorite.
Do you want to know my favorite? Okay. चंडी रूप धरी महारानी दोनों हाथ तलवार भागन लागी दिल्ली की सेना दुर्गा से न पाई पार. So this is really interesting, Neha.
And
we had not discussed
that, let us keep something interesting for the session. We'll discuss each other's favorite one, and turns out we are on the very same page. Literally the same page.
Same page.
So I just want to say this, that I had a great time collecting these dohas, these songs, and I spoke to a gentleman called Manoj Maravi. He's a tribal Gond balladeer. तो मैंने उसे पूछा कि आप जो गाना जो बनाते हो किसके बारे में बनाते हो. So he says Rani Durgawati ji और Raja Shankar Raghunath ji. So very quickly, I just want 2 seconds to tell you who was Shankar Raghunath. Shankar Raghunath was the last, father and son were the last Rajgond monarchs who participated in the uprising of 1857, were captured by the East India Company officials, tied to the muzzle of a cannon and blown off. Okay, so they are local heroes in the 1857 uprising. तो फिर मैंने पूछा उनसे कि आप इन दोनों के बारे में क्यों लिखते हो. And he says हमारे 2 दुश्मन थे. एक थे मुगलों, दूसरा थे अंग्रेज. And if you look at what happened, the depredations, a couple of sessions ago we were talking about ecology. And if you look at how badly the ecology of that area suffered as a result of these 2 outside interventions, then you will know why the Gonds sing about the Rani.
Well, as we come to the last chapter of this session, it is befitting that we have this session here. This very land was the part of Garha Katanga, the very land where the Gonds ruled. And of course, Bhopal has always been ruled by Begums. for more than 100 years. So it's only befitting that we have this session on the forgotten life of a warrior queen in this very place. Well, I would like to end by the last lines of your book, and I read from the book. As long as her songs and stories reverberate through the length and breadth of a land, for her people, Virangana Durgavati will always remain Gondwana's Amar Jyoti. Fierce, feminine, model monarch, and goddess. Thank you so much for all of you for engaging in this exploration of a queen who did never die.
Never die. Yes. And please, any questions from the
Yes.
audience? Yes.
I think we
Neha.
have a question there.
You want the mic, Siddha?
Hello, ma'am. I'm Neha I'm associate editor with Manjul Publishing House. My question is, you touched upon her elephant in the beginning, and then you mentioned at the very end. Would like you to touch upon a bit more about the elephant and Rani's bonding or where.
Okay, so I'm sorry about that. You'll get the entire story of the elephant in my book, The Blue Horse, and other amazing animals. But the elephant, Rani Durgavati had a Gondwana, that part of Gondwana was known for elephants. That is the reason why they were so rich. It was a very rich kingdom, and they used to supply war elephants. So Rani had a fantastic stable and lots of elephants, and there are Sanskrit sloks which talk about some very unusual elephants she had. The Gonds believed that Sarman was a white elephant. The Sanskrit shlokas, which are primary sources, refer to its dappled grey skin. So it was probably light grey, still an unusual color, elephant, who was given to Rani by a scholar called Raghunandan Rai. And the Raghunandan Rai had a tiff with the Rani, went to the neighboring kingdom of Bastar, where the Raja gave him 7 elephants, and he chose the best of the lot, and that was Sarman, and donated him to Rani Durgavati. And Sarman became like her son. So again, legend says that when she used to do her puja in the morning, Sarman would go to Narmada and take water in his trunk and spray her with Narmada ji's water. So this is the story that is connected to, and also the fact that she and Sarman forged a bond. She had gone tiger hunting. The tiger had attacked the elephant and scratched its hind. At that point, typically what happens is the elephant is blinded with pain, so they run amok. But Sarman did not. He actually got Rani out of that situation back to safety. And since then, she thought of him as her elder son. So she would never ride. If you go to Jabalpur, you will see there are many, many statues of Rani Durgavati. There are 2 things that stand out. Number 1, she only ever rides an elephant. You are not going to see any representation of Rani Durgavati riding a horse or anything else. She's always on Sarman the elephant. Number 2, she's always dressed like a man. You know, like the Mughal jama and trouser, and with chain mail and with naked sword in her hand. So she's a very virile image of the patron saint of that area, but she's always on Sarman.
Any other questions from the audience?
Sure.
Pass on the mic to her, so that everyone can listen to it.
Satya ji has asked me to read a little from the book. This is a small excerpt from the opening chapter, and it also gives the context of Rani Durgavati. The story of Virangana Durgavati is a story of memories, of why she was remembered and why she was forgotten. Mainstream Indian history remembers her as a footnote, a tribal queen from central India who lost her kingdom to Mughal Emperor Akbar. But for her people, her memory is the gilded dream of an age of pride and plenty. It's been nearly 460 years since this brave queen made her final sacrifice, but her people have not forgotten her even for a day. Gond Rani Durgavati of Garha Mandla was and continues to be a symbol of hope. For the tribal Gonds who were her people, there never has been, nor ever will be, a more model monarch. This constant harking back to a golden age ruled by a goddess queen is understandable when seen in the context of the deprivation that the region suffered in the intervening centuries. Whenever the traditional way of life, from food to faith, came under attack, local memory, Gond and otherwise, remembered the Rani. So Garha was known as the Golden Gourd. They were so rich. And by the time the British were done with it, the songs, if you read the book, there are many, many songs quoted. They talk of famine, they talk of disease, they talk of deprivation. They are saying, we do not even have a page. Page is a gruel made of millets that they used to have. They are saying, we do not have even enough page to feed our children. So the golden gourd that used to be so rich that invaders attacked it for the loot, Asaf Khan definitely attacked for the loot, became a center of deprivation, disease and death. That's the tragedy of Garha.
I think what you changed today, as I mentioned in one of the questions to you, was usually we have that image of a man on a white horse who ruled. Today you've changed it to woman on an elephant.
White elephant.
Absolutely, absolutely. White elephant.
And I think, as we celebrate the forgotten life of this warrior, beautiful queen, lest we forget that cheers to all the women who ruled, who will rule against tides of nature, against tides of the patriarchy, which is still going on and which will go on maybe for another hundreds of years. But let us see that even though this queen was overlooked by many, she still remains as a formidable presence in the annals of time. Thank you so much for this session. Thank you, Nandini, for joining us.
Thank you, Nandini. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank you.
Neha.
Thank you, Jyoti.
Are there any more questions from the audience? All right, so I believe that this is the end of the session. Thank you so much, ladies, for this illuminating discussion, and to Nandini ma'am for writing this book, because there is indeed a dearth of information on Rani Durgawati. And so thank you for helping with that. I would like to request Nandini ma'am to spend some time at the author's signing desk as well, near Antarang, so that people who have maybe questions or want to get the copy signed by you can find you. Now, as a token of our appreciation, I would like to invite Raghav Chandra sir, founder BLF and President Society for Culture and Environment, to felicitate our presenter and discussant with mementos.
Wonderful. So I want to say something before I... Nandini, first of all, congratulations. You've done a wonderful job. Now let me tell you something very, very anecdotal. I was District Magistrate Jabalpur in the years 91, 92.
Serendipity is a favorite word.
So I remember that when we were choosing authors, the moment I saw this book on Rani Durgavati, it immediately caught my eye. And though I have not read the book, but I will get it signed by you. And Jabalpur, Rani Durgavati is absolutely a legendary figure there. The Vishwavidyalaya, that is the university, is named after her. It's called Rani Durgavati Vishwavidyalaya. I think the airport is also named after...
Stadium,
yes.
the hospital.
The hospital are all being slowly renamed after her. There is the Gadha, there is a thana named called the Gadha Thana, which is on the Mandla Road. And Rani Durgavati figures everywhere in Jabalpur. It's just a pity that we have forgotten her. Bhopal also had a tribal queen called Rani Kamlapati, after whom the Kamlapati railway station is there, and there's also a Kamlapati palace here. Kamla Park is there. So it's a pity that we've forgotten our queens, especially the tribal queens, the tribal kings, who have played such an important role in assimilating many of the cultures that were fragmented and which were part of the forests and the tribal lives. But these tribal kings, through their prowess, through their assimilative abilities, they brought them to the fore. And I'm so delighted and so honored to, have you talking about Rani Durgawati.
Really, really honored. This was her land, so it is entirely in the fitness of things that we talk about her here.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, Raghav sir. Mascot for BLF, the Mento, is developed by senior Gond artist Sri Ram Singh Urvedi ji, and it reflects a motif rooted in timeless stories. Ram Singh ji brings to life swaying trees and mythical forms, echoing the melodies of Pande, the revered musical instrument of the Parthan Gonds. The particular piece chosen for this year highlights how ideas that BLF also helps spread take